Shin Jyutsu and immunity. All I'm going to talk about today is simple, easy practices that you can use anytime, anywhere. So in today's session, I'll give you a little bit of an introduction, mostly focusing on immunity. I'll give you a whistle-stop tour of Jin Shin Jyutsu 101, and then we'll move right along to the best part, the 3 tips for self-care, and we'll practice those together. It'll be a short practice just because I know everybody's busy today, and these are things you can always extend after you've left the time. And then, as I mentioned, there'll be time for questions and answers at the end. So when I think about immunity, I was talking to a friend today, and we were agreeing that it's in the news everywhere, and it's not a positive thing. And it's just very draining and overwhelming. So one of the things that it draws up for me as well is that immunity has been an issue in my life since before COVID, long before COVID. When I was a young mother with my second child just having turned 3, so they were very small, very cute, but I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. And it caused me to question a lot of things and to face that we do have a limited lifespan, and where would I be? Well, the good news is that I raised my children past those wonderful teenage years, and I'm still here today, and I feel so much better, actually. But around the time that my children were teenagers, not because of them, just health issues for me, life caught up with me, and I wasn't well. And I went from doctor to doctor, and they didn't have any answers. So finally, the rheumatologist said, right, let's get you sorted. We'll put you in the Bon Secours, and we'll run all the tests we need to do. And as they did more and more tests, I felt less and less hope, because they were all just kind of scratching their heads going, don't know. So then the coordinating consultant, my rheumatologist, came in and said, well, the good news is that we didn't find anything. Isn't that great? And I am very grateful that I didn't have any immediately critical life issues, but I was still left with the chronic fatigue and pain in my joints and some other symptoms that were just really hard to deal with. And I remember sitting in the hospital bed, and I just didn't see how things would get any different. I felt so hopeless. I mean, I had children at home. I had things that I was doing in my life. I had friends, and I wasn't enjoying any of it. I was just run down. So it was a very hard time in my life. But fortunately, that desperation and that hopelessness let me into a whole new world, because I started looking at immunity in a whole new way. And I'd like to suggest that we consider immunity in a more positive slant. So instead of looking at immunity solely, I'd like to suggest that we tweak it a little bit, play with some words, and focus on the positives that I'm in unity. Because when we're well and when we're feeling better, we are in unity with the universe, with our lives and our purposes. Now, I didn't just get out of the hospital bed and boom, I was all set. No, I had a process, and I started looking into complementary therapies, and I did quite a lot of them, and they were brilliant. The only downside was that I had to keep going back, and I was relying on someone else to heal me. And then I was thinking there still has to be more. And I remember Googling meridians, Chinese meridians, and Ireland and acupressure. And I came across this practitioner who lived 10 minutes from me. Amazing. And I asked about what this, I couldn't even say the word, what it was back then, the Jin Shin Jyutsu. I asked what it was, and she said, come for a session. So I did. And it helped me feel better. It helped me be better. So much so that I had blood tests every 6 months. And after some treatments, there was actually such an improvement in my blood results that the technician marked it on the file. See, marked increase. So it really has been a process for me. And I'm so grateful to have Jin Shin Jyutsu in my life and to be able to share it with you. So this foreign sounding word that I didn't have any clue what it was, what it really comes down to is very practical things that we can do to help ourselves. And you can also receive sessions from practitioners. And that's really helpful if you're having challenging health issues. And I also find it really nice to go for a session as a bit of pampering, because it's so relaxing and restful that I normally fall asleep during a session. And actually, most of my clients do too. It's just releasing the tension and allowing your body to re-access its innate healing abilities. So the art of Jin Shin is based on ancient Eastern wisdom. Back in the 1940s, in Japan, there was a gentleman named Jiro Murai, and he was facing a terminal illness as a young man. And he was able to, on his deathbed, he'd gone away to just meet his maker, but he spent 7 days with his breath and holding hand positions. And he came down from his self-imposed isolation and was healed. So he devoted the rest of his life to reinvigorating the ancient knowledge, to expanding it based on studying how the human body worked and his own experience, and bringing it to a place where his understanding could be shared with others. In fact, in 1960, one of his key students, Mary Burmeister, brought the gift of Jin Shin Jyutsu to the Western world. And some people were very aligned to complementary therapies, some weren't. And I think that's changing, and that's a good thing. Because maybe you have heard of the meridians. I hadn't really heard of them. I did some exploration and discovered that they were based from traditional Chinese medicine, and they were used in reflexology and acupuncture. And they're also used in Jin Shin Jyutsu. So there's a lot of similarities, but I find that Jin Shin Jyutsu is very special because it's a very gentle art. So much so that, and I'll be talking to you about this in the self-care tips, you don't need to massage or press or try to do it. You can be gentle. And actually, when I do a session, my goal is to be very gentle and let the body heal itself, and the energies can cycle through. So much so that I was taught that when you're placing your hands on the client's body very gently, if there was a piece of paper between their trousers and your hand, you should be able to pull the piece of paper out without disturbing the client. So it's a very gentle art. And that's definitely suits me. So the other core tenet that I've mentioned, and I'll probably mention several more times, is self-care. The art of Jin Shin is to get to know yourself. And by knowing yourself and having the awareness, you can increase the harmony, reconnect with your joy, serenity, and vitality. So enough about Jin Shin Jyutsu. I've prattled on about that long enough. Before we get into the fun part of the self-help, I invite you to take a breath and check in with your body. I don't know about you, but I tend to get busy during the day and I'll be running around and I forget to breathe properly. And I might have tension in my shoulders or my back, and I'm not aware of it. So I invite you to consider how you're feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally. And just make a note for yourself. It's one of those things where you might be feeling amazing, on top of the world, like the green man or the green emoji. Or you might be feeling a bit more challenged. You might be feeling a little bit more like the orange emoji with the not too sure look on their face. And I think I'm probably around the light green man. I feel pretty good, but I could feel better. So I'm going to remember that for after we finish our short practice. To experience a bit of unity, I'm going to share with you just 3 examples of self-care tips. And they have to do with, on the left-hand side, our hands, because in Jin Shin Jyutsu, we can harmonize all of the functions in our body through our hands. All the meridians run through our hands in certain pathways. And simply by holding a finger, we can harmonize a certain aspect of our being. The second type of tip that I'm going to share with you has to do with the energy centers or locations spread throughout our body. We have a total of 52, 26 on one side, and a mirror image of 26 on the other side. And they go from the top of the head all the way down to the toes. So I'll be sharing about one of those safety energy locks with you today. The third tip, a little more complicated. You're welcome to join me in it. If you find that holding your hand or holding a safety energy lock is sufficient, you can stay with those. If you're ready for a little bit more complicated things, you're welcome to join me for the sequence. So to experience a bit of unity, today we're just going to look at 2 of our fingers, our thumb and our index finger. Very powerful, actually. When we hold our thumb, we can hold it in any way that feels good. Our body is not particular. It still remembers. So by holding your thumb, and you can put your hands in your lap, drop your shoulders, relax. And if you can't relax, just be. The energy will still work. So when you're holding your thumb, that helps to ease worries. Some people say that it turns worries into wonder. It also helps with our digestion, because I know that sometimes if I'm not feeling great, my digestion will be a bit off. So hold your thumb. And then keeping it in the theme of today's talk, it also supports your immune system. So by holding your thumb, it does all these things, plus lots more else that I don't have time to talk to you about today. So that's holding the thumb. You can hold one and then the other, or you can just stay with one. Whatever feels best for you. So the second part of this first tip is to hold your index finger. The index finger helps to ease fears. It turns fear into faith, fear into flow. So if we're caught up in our fears, we don't breathe, we get tense, we get stressed. By holding your index finger, you can connect with the cosmic energy and to get more into the flow of life. And as you're getting more into the flow of life, you'll probably have more mental clarity. Clearer thoughts are always a good thing in my book. Sometimes I get a bit fuzzled or fuzzy, and if I hold my index finger, I'll have more mental clarity. And just another added bonus of holding your index finger, it helps your reproductive system. So if you have anything going on with that, you're also helping that part of your body. So that's the first type of tip, and I'll move on to the second, the safety energy locks. I took this picture last weekend, and I was going to replace it, but I decided that I was going to keep it because it really embodies how I feel when I hold safety energy lock 22. This particular safety energy is located just below your collarbones. So if you have a feel, come down from the top of your shoulders and you know where your collarbones are, and just below there. And I like to cross my hands. You can hold your hands uncrossed or crossed, whatever suits you. And I put up that this is about love because I have a longer history with this, a positive one this time. When my children were infants and they couldn't talk and I really wanted to communicate with them, I learned something called baby signs. And this was the symbol for baby sign love. So when you're holding your 22s, you're giving yourself a little bit of love. You're also helping yourself to adapt, to think clearly, and to ease your emotional stress. The other more clinical part is right here is where our thyroid or our lymphatic ducts are located. And the lymphatic ducts are so important for our immune system because that's where our body processes everything. Our lymph system is throughout our whole body, and the clearinghouse, so to speak, is at the 22s. It also relates to your thyroid and parathyroid glands. So there's loads of benefits. And you can just cross your hands, drop your shoulders. And the person who taught me Jin Shin Jyutsu said, "Be the smile." Actually, I heard that from so many instructors in so many classes, and I'm finally starting to understand just a little bit of it. So that's 2 types of tips. I hope you're enjoying it, and if you want to stay holding your index finger or your thumb, or stay with your hands on your 22s, you're welcome to do that. If you're ready to pick up another self-care tip, you're welcome to come along with me. This one's a bit more complicated and involves a safety energy lock together with our fingers, so it puts the best of both together. In our body, in addition to the 22s, another safety energy lock we have is our 3s. And that is at the back, on our back, at the top of our shoulder blade. And we have one on each side. You can pick which side to cross over, but do cross your hand over and just rest it over your shoulder, kind of like a coat hanger. This helps to ease tension in our bodies, helps our breathing, and it helps our immune system. So you could actually just hold this and still help your immune system. But to just raise it up a level, we can hold our fingers as well. And this side of our hand has to do with inhaling and receiving. This side has to do with exhaling and releasing tensions. So we want to do both those things, and we do 3 cycles of each of the fingers. So I'll talk you through the first cycle, and then we'll continue with the second and third. So holding our safety energy lock 3, we start by putting our thumb on our ring or on our index nail bed, and that's for the inhale. And then on the pad of our index finger for the exhale. Middle finger, inhale, nail bed, exhale, finger pad. Ring finger, inhale, nail bed, exhale, finger pad. Little finger, inhale, nail bed, exhale, finger pad. So that's one cycle, and we'll do it 2 more times. So and if you lose track of where you are, just remember the best you can. I think that was the second cycle, so I'll continue with what I think is the third. And that's one of the things that I also like about Jin Shin Jyutsu. I used to be, I call myself a recovering perfectionist, so I always had to get it just right. But with Jin Shin Jyutsu, if you lose track of your counting or the sequence, that's okay. Just pick up where you left off as you can remember, or if you want to start over again, that's fine too. Your body's wisdom will help you to feel better. So that was just a few tips from the many hundreds that there are in Jin Shin Jyutsu. So I invite you to check in with yourself again. How are you feeling after a few minutes of Jin Shin Jyutsu? How are you feeling physically, mentally, and emotionally? Are you still on the same color emoji, or has it changed a bit? I hope so. I know that I've moved from the green man up to the dark green man. I feel so much better. So I hope you've enjoyed this. And just to wrap up the talk part, before we go into the questions and answers and sharing, I have 3 main points that I'd like you to take away from today. The first one is that you can help yourself anytime, anywhere. If you've enjoyed these tips and you'd like to have them in a physical form on a piece of paper to take away with you, and you send me a note, I can email them to you. My email is jackie@energyflows.ie. You can also find information on the web more generally. So if you've enjoyed this and you'd like to book a session or to join one of my self-care workshops, you'd be very welcome to. You can find links for that on the website, www.energyflows.ie. And I also can be found on Facebook and Instagram. So I hope you've enjoyed that.